Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Naveed, your moderator for today's webinar on how community networks are supporting communities during COVID-19. I'm the Regional Director for Infrastructure and Connectivity for Asia Pacific. And today we have an amazing set of experts who have been working for years about the community networks. We have Dr. Sarbani Belur, who's the Senior Research Scientist for India Institute of Technology. She's also the Regional Coordinator for APC for Asia Pacific. Then we have Gustaff Iskandar, who is a founder of Common Room Networks Foundation from Indonesia. And then we have Rajnesh Singh, who's the Regional Vice President for Asia Pacific with the Internet Society. I also have Howard Beggar, who is gonna help us to stay engaged during the webinar. And then I also have Jolly McPhee. You can't see him, but he is helping us to have this event going live on the live stream. We have 191 participants so far, and we expect the number will go on. So folks, please enjoy the discussions, and we want you to be engaged and as much as interactive as you can. And so COVID-19, of course, has bring a lot of challenges, but it has also bring opportunities. One of the opportunity that we see is that internet is being realized as something which is kind of a lifeline. The need to have access to the internet has never been that important as it is now. And that's where we're going to have our discussion today. And I'll bring first Rajnesh Singh from Internet Society. Raj, you've been working on community networks since years and years. You have a lot of experience in Asia Pacific, seeing how different communities behave and also what is the need and requirement to bring them online. But talking about the half of the world is not connected. Tell us how community networks, as per your experience, can fit into this picture of connecting the unconnected.
Thanks, Naveed, and hello, everyone. Glad to be here talking with you today. In terms of what we need to do, so let me put it this way. If you look at how internet access is spread out across the world, most of the urban centers are quite well connected up. Semi-rural areas are also well connected up. Naveed mentioned that half the world still remains offline, however. And the reason for that, of course, is that most of the people who are not connected are coming from places where it's hard to connect them. Now, there's multiple reasons for that. Sometimes it's to do with terrain. Sometimes it's to do with the cost of doing the connections. Sometimes it's got to do with the literacy issues, digital literacy issues, as well as normal literacy issues. But most of all, I think one of the problems is that there's an issue of affordability. For a lot of these locations and places, for commercial operators, ISPs and telecom companies, it's just not economically viable to go in and deploy their networks. So this is where community networks can play a great role, because ultimately a community network, at least in the way that we like to define it, is something that's built by the community, run by the community, and it's for the community itself. And that really is the critical thing here. So it's not about setting up a large network to make money. It's not usually a money-making enterprise. What you want to do is to ensure that people in that community, be it a village, some rural part of the country, or wherever it may be, that they are able to access the internet and they're able to get online. The cost is always a problem, of course, and I'm sure later today we'll discuss some of the various models that people are also using in how to connect people up. But ultimately, what it boils down to is people in rural areas who may not have the right or as fancy and sophisticated devices as their urban cousins may have. They may not have the same economic power that you would have in urban areas, and they may not even see a real need to be online. So that's the other little factor that also comes into place. So it's not just about providing the infrastructure, but the community network should also really be helping create a demand for digital services, which also means training the community. So I'll stop there because I'm sure we'll have some greater discussions following from this.
Thanks, Raj. So we can say that community networks fit into the gaps that we have at the last mile where people are not able to get the access, primarily because the ISPs or mobile operators, those who are providing internet services traditionally, don't see a business case, or they might have a footprint there, but the quality of the access or the signals, if I say in simple word, is not as good as they should be. And that's where the community networks infrastructure that's built by the community for the community can fit in. Thanks, Raj, for this. Now, let's go into the community networks which are working. I'll start with Gustaff Iskandar. Gustaff, you've been doing this work in Indonesia, and we see that Indonesia as a country is actually so many islands, and the geography says that, you know, perhaps having connectivity everywhere is a challenge, and that's where your work comes into Indonesia. Tell us about your work, and also tell us how your community network in Indonesia is working and helping the community during the current pandemic when everyone wants to be online.
Yeah, well, thank you, Naveed, and all friends at the Internet Society. Yeah, a bit of a little story about how the internet development in Indonesia is growing. I think everybody knows that in the past couple of years, there's a huge increasing numbers of internet access and penetration in many parts of Indonesia, as our government is trying to build a proper infrastructure that connect different islands and places. But I think Raj is quite true that in terms of enclave places, in particular to remote areas, small villages, islands, and so on. As Indonesia consists of thousands of islands and small villages that are located in remote areas, we can say that there are still a lot of underserved communities that are needed to access the internet infrastructure. And our effort to support and develop a community network in Indonesia is particularly growing with our shared interest to collaborate and work with the indigenous community of Kasepuan Ciptagelaris, which is located in remote places in southern part of West Java. And why we see that working with indigenous community is somehow important, because in many cases in Indonesia, or maybe also in other part of the world, the position of indigenous community is not seen as scalable users or market for telecom company. So we need to find out how to provide our own internet connectivities that are somehow being developed and managed by the people, and then can be utilized by local people, and also importantly can create jobs and increasing alternative income, because in Indonesia there are still a lot of limitations among indigenous community, not only in Java Island, but also in many regions in Indonesia. And in regards to the pandemic situation in Indonesia, the necessity to have internet connectivity is extremely increasing, not only for daily communications, but also for medical purpose and also educational, and also for the local government in a village or remote places. So, yeah, I think the pandemic situation now in Indonesia is giving us a huge challenge, but also opportunity for community networks in order to proceed and continue to what we have been working for quite some time. Because we can say that the community network movement in Indonesia is already started, I think, in around late 90s and still growing up until now. And there are different approach and business models on how people develop their own community networks. And now we are trying to look at different business models and practice and see this as a learning process. And hopefully we can also share all of this knowledge to a larger community. That's from me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gustav. So 2 points that I can think about that you raised are very important. One is the empowerment side. So connectivity brings empowerment. And it's when it happens in the rural side where most of the population lives, especially in South Asian countries, that is where you bridge up that empowerment gap as well. So it's not only giving the connectivity through community networks to the rural population, but also letting them to empower themselves. And the second is the garment side, where this pandemic garment services need to run, and how the community networks are helping actually the garments to keep running those services. And that's where I'll bring Sarbani, because in India, one, we have a huge population that lives in villages. And second, the garment services like Aadhaar, and I see that a lot of Indian services are moving or have been moved to internet. Sarbani, tell us how your community network in India is working, and especially from these two sides. What are the empowerment sides that you see from your work in India, and how it's helping the community to access garment services, maybe digital transactions or whatever services are there during pandemic?
Thank you, Naveed. Thanks for inviting me to this session. It's I look forward to interacting with so many people here in this session. I have been working in this domain of community networks for the past 4 to 5 years, and have been working in this domain of initially looking at connecting the unconnected, but slowly moved into understanding that what are the needs for connectivity by the people whom we connect, wherein I have tried to understand that how can connectivity be sustainable in the last mile, and wherein we have developed the 4P model, which is a public-private panchayat partnership model, and wherein that's something that has been the contribution, and of course community-led networks, that is networks that are by the community for the community, based on community needs. So originally networks are formed that we have to connect the unconnected, but often people forget to understand that what are the needs of the community over there. Like Raj and Gustav has rightly pointed out, that there are various needs of the community. There is need for digital literacy, there is need for empowerment, and our community networks, the community networks is a step towards that we build up the network, the connectivity network, only for the people and by the people. So we are just hand-holding them for enabling the network to be set up. So this is something that we have done in the last year, that I have actually worked together on a funding from APC, Association for Progressive Communications, and I am also now the Asia Regional Coordinator for APC. And this was a funding by APC for as part of the Connecting the Unconnected program, and wherein I seeded the growth of community network in a small remote village of 2,000 population. As a population size is 2,000, covering 5 hamlets. And I would like to share that story, that the community network over there, they did not need the connectivity for making phone calls, but they needed the connectivity for enabling the banking services, for which they were actually traveling 12 kilometers to the city, even to check their bank balance or draw money from the ATM. So they wanted the connectivity for that reason to inside the community. And we facilitated it, we facilitated it with the help of the community by enabling a a banking correspondent who is a lady in the village, because we wanted to empower the women in the village first, and then it goes down to the men in the village. And we nominated two people. One is the banking correspondent and the other the digital correspondent. And the banking correspondent enables the banking services within the village through an Aadhaar-enabled payment system and biometrics device on a smartphone. And the connectivity is through a SIM card-based cellular router, wherein the SIM card is of the banking correspondent herself, which is deployed on the tower that we have set up in the middle of the village. So it's a centrally located place, and a community support center has been developed. Now, the rest of the network is an offline network over there, and people use it for local knowledge creation and services, like like we have deployed community radio within the community, so that people can start creating knowledge on their traditional things. Like, these are indigenous tribes over there. So these knowledge are shared in those through the community radio in the access points that are set up within the village, 2 access points per village. And of course, also because these are indigenous tribes, they also have a lot of knowledge on their agricultural practices. So that is also being captured by the people. So the people themselves record their audios and videos, and they upload it. So during the pandemic, we actually completed the project last year, December 2019, and it was such a good timing that we completed the project and the pandemic has come in. We are using the same banking correspondent whom we had enabled with the same devices that we have set up. She is now the lifeline in the village. And there has been transactions going on by the villagers because they cannot come to the city now. All roads are closed. So they are not able to come out from their village. And she is the person who is enabling the cash withdrawals in the community. She also has diversified by enabling mobile recharges happening inside the village. And the government services, like, the different government services that have come up during the pandemic for the villagers has also come out, has also been enabled with this infrastructure. The other thing is that I would like to mention that currently I am also with the spoken tutorial project at IIT Bombay. And because the health has been a concern, the young mothers and children has been a concern during this pandemic, we have enabled a toll-free number that can be reached out. We can be reached through the toll-free number, and women can talk about their problems, and the doctors and nutritionists are on the back end, which they help the women to answer these queries. So this has been the empowerment journey of ours by seeding the growth of community networks and using the infrastructure that we have set up. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarbani. Well, I'm seeing the chat, and there are a lot of messages already. In fact, we have around 7 questions which have been put. So thank you, folks, for putting them. We'll, of course, be taking them to the panelists soon. I see on chat some people are appreciating this discussion. Some are raising this concern that internet connectivity is a great problem in their area, and some are slagging that internet for the people, by the people is a great work. So this is great. Now we heard from Gustaff and Sarbani. Let me take you to some videos that actually visually demonstrate how they are working in Indonesia and India. So for that, I'll move to Javi. If he can take us through some videos, please.
ngomong ieu nya.
Asik ya. Tangakeun. 67 68 67. Oh, coba digular giliran.
Langsung scan terus.
671.
Betul.
20. Lalu batin tingkat kiri.
Saya
71.
scan terus.
Raha.
Di daerah Pasir Panjang, luas wilayah satu desa, ada 12 titik.
Jaringannya nggak ada.
Ya.
Sangat mendukung lah adanya membantu wifi ini, banyak orang yang mendukung gitu, membutuhkan sangat membantu lah untuk kelancaran jaringan komunikasi lagi.
Thanks, Javi. It was really, I was reading the chat as well during the video, and some people are asking about the recording of this webinar. Of course, you will get the recording. My colleague Jolly has put the live stream channel, and after this webinar finishes, we'll have the recording available on that link. Now, moving on to some of the questions that I'm seeing, and a lot of them are actually coming from the educational side. I think that is one of the key challenge that people living in villages are facing now. While everything is moving online, the classes are, the education, the health, the students in those areas are facing this challenge, that they don't have the connectivity that can enable them to learn, to be educated. And that's where I see a lot of people have raised that what can be done on that side. I mean, what can be done from the government side, but also how these people can have an access to internet so they can at least continue having their classes, and what are some challenges around it. So I'll move to Raj. Raj, if you can answer this concern from the participants, from the education side, and what do you think, what can be done in short time, maybe some of the actions that the governments can take, or how to help those students?
Look, fundamentally, I don't think anything can happen overnight. So this is one of the problems that I think we've seen around the world. So it's not just with developing countries or rural areas. As an example, here in Australia during this pandemic, where we also had to move students to online education, students were struggling, schools were struggling. And the reason for that is because we don't have the systems in place to be able to deliver online education. Now, we've talked about online education for a very long time, but when it comes to the practical deployment of that online teaching, that has lots of issues at the moment because it really has never been tested to this extent. Now, yes, universities and colleges have online learning classes, but they're not the same as teaching younger kids, the next generation school kids, through remote learning methodologies. Now, in terms of what can be done, so there's multiple parts to that problem. One is having connectivity itself, obviously. Without connectivity, you can't get to digital learning. Number two is having the relevant devices and infrastructure available in the classrooms, in the schools, or in the kids' homes, as it were. Third is having the classes itself in a manner that can be delivered remotely, which also, of course, includes having teachers who are aware how to deliver. One of the issues that we've seen here in Australia in particular, and I know it's also happened in other places, is even though with all the infrastructure in place, internet connectivity in place, teachers themselves did not have the capabilities to be able to deal with delivering classes online. And here I'm talking about a wealthy, developed, advanced country which couldn't cope. So imagine how it would be in other places. So there's no one simple answer to this. I think from the government perspective, there has to be a holistic approach to how they move digital learning or how they move to digital learning. It has to be part of existing syllabus. The syllabus has to be revised and revisited to ensure that it can be delivered remotely. Teachers need to be, their capacity has to be built up to be able to deliver those classes. Kids themselves, be they in a rural area, in a village, or even in an urban town or city environment, they need to have the relevant devices as well as the relevant literacy in order to be able to use those devices. So it's a multi-part problem. I think a lot of people are very dismissive by saying we can just go to digital learning. That, I'm afraid, is just not a very practical way to approach things, because there's lots of things that need to be fixed first before we can go headlong into that. Now, that's not to say that I'm knocking the issue. Obviously, digital learning has a very important place, particularly now. So as we more and more we are moving to an integrated digital environment for everyone. I mean, being digital, being online is now part of everyday life. But I think governments in particular, and here it goes to the ministries and departments of education. So it's not an IT ministry or a government issue. It's actually the education department which needs to pull its socks up and see how we can ensure that the syllabus as well as the delivery methods are able to cope with where digital learning is heading. So I'll stop there because I'm sure my colleagues on the panel have some other insights to offer.
Sarbani and Gustav, maybe Sarbani, if we can start with you.
Yeah, I agree with what Raj just mentioned, that there has been, the pandemic has caught us unawares. And we have actually not, teachers don't have the training to hold online classes because we are used to blackboard and chalk teaching. And it's the same. It's not only in India, but it's also there in different parts of the world, and everyone is caught unawares. But herein, I would like to say that if there is a possibility by which we can do some remote teaching, offline teaching, which can become a very good platform that can be built. And herein I would like to talk about the spoken tutorial project at IIT Bombay, which has been there since 2009, and we have lots of softwares and skill development programs on the spoken tutorial spoken-tutorial.org website, which is like which are made for low bandwidth situations, made for locations where there is absolutely no internet. So you can download these tutorials free of cost, without any payment, free of cost, and can be used by the youth or the children they have a school dedicated program as well, which can be used by the children offline, and it can be a good resource for people to learn, the youth to understand, learn IT literacy, because these software skills can take them, perhaps when the situation becomes better, they can use it to get jobs in a particular in offices or companies. So this is something that I would like to say, that we can use the connectivity, not a streaming of the teacher child or the teacher student teaching, but it can be in a remote way which can be facilitated, and offline it can be downloaded and kept, which can be viewed by the children at their own time whenever it's feasible for them. Yeah, so that's.
Thanks. No, thanks, Sarbani. I think this also is a good point, that how we can still have those offline digital material available to support the students at this time. Gustaff, I would ask you a different question about the challenges you faced during the community, or the current challenges per se that you are facing while working during the pandemic, and what kind of support you see that you need from the government or from the industry to make sure that you keep on connecting the unconnected people in rural side of Indonesia. Gustaff, you're muted.
Thank you. It is affirmative that we have a multi-layer challenge and complexity in terms of providing reliable and affordable internet access in regards to the pandemic situations. In the village that I am working with, we are quite lucky that the connecting the unconnected project, which is collaboratively developed together with APC, is somehow timely correct, as we developed that project starting from last year, and then earlier this year, the pandemic situation hitting us very bad, and I think nobody prepared and know how to deal with these pandemic situations, either for short term or in the longer run, because we don't even know what will happen next year, for example. But in terms of providing reliable and affordable access for people, especially in the remote areas like small villages or islands and so on, I think one of the things that is quite challenging for us is one area can be addressed to the policy, regulation, and licenses, that somehow for small or micro ISPs probably is going to be very challenging to get or to have licenses or even proper operational policies that can back up these local internet connectivities. So now I think we're going to we will try to continue our collaborations in providing internet access for people in the underserved area together with APC, and we are quite lucky. Starting from this year, we also collaborate with DFID and got support with friends from the UK embassies in Indonesia, that we trying to map out, because I think in various situations and different countries, we have different ecosystem on internet infrastructure in terms of regulations, policy, licenses, and so on. So the first thing that we are going to do is to map out this ecosystem in Indonesia. And then we also have a plan to do a series of workshops and trainings, especially for those who are actively engaged in community network development in many parts of Indonesia. And so together with that, there are some issues in technicalities, business models, or even how to make this effort in developing local internet infrastructure can be managed sustainably with good sustainability and so on. And of course, our main target is how to provide internet connectivities to deal with pandemic challenges, like for example, how internet connectivities can help people to get internet access so they can have a more better understanding on what is the COVID-19 pandemic is all about. Because as you probably noticed, we also have a big challenge in infodemy, where not only a huge number of information about the COVID-19 pandemic, but also fake news and other challenging situations in the area of internet connectivities and media, like digital media. And the other is we think aiming to provide reliable and affordable internet access for educational purposes, for village administrations, so we can still continue works in regards to the pandemic situation. So I think there are many different challenges, facets, and layers, both in national and local level. And our huge challenge is because Indonesia is very big, and we have thousands of different islands, and the structure of government is also quite different. We have central government, we have regional government, we have local government and village government. All this different structure is interconnected with each other, but sometimes also there are disconnectivity in terms of policy and regulations, either in national or regional level. So how to find a loophole that allow a local ISP or even micro ISP that operates in village level can work properly with a good legal framework is also needed. So now we are trying to collaborate with other colleagues from the internet ecosystem in Indonesia, like ICT Watch and Relawan TIK and so on, and to address these issues and challenges. And yeah, and our collaborations with APC and the FID is also quite helpful to addressing that huge areas. And hopefully through our discussions with Internet Society, we can also have a good insight on how we can make this more feasible and practical in a lower level. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gustav. Yes, from Internet Society, we've been working in this space for 10 years. We started from Asia Pacific. We have a program called W4C, which is Wireless for Communities. And of course, we are one of those organizations which you are more than welcome to approach in case you want to work and know more about community network. This year, we also have a community network project, and we're working across the globe. So I see some chat about, again, people are appreciating the discussion. I see some raise of hand as well, so I'll get back to that later. But if you have any questions, please put it in Q&A. Moving on to our discussions, we have last 10 minutes. So Raj, when we talk about community networks, and I see that, a lot of the audience that we have today are new one, and then see that there is a need. Do you see there is an opportunity where these community networks can become something which is more like a small enterprises, let's say, small ISPs, let's say. I remember those time in telecommunication when I was working for a telecommunication regulator. We used to have more than 100 ISPs in the country, which are now even less than 8. Now, because of the big market players coming in, putting a lot of investment into mobile networks, those small players who were still serving 1,000, 2,000 customers, a small rural place, are gone. Do you see community networks coming into that space where there can be maybe some government policies that can encourage to let people have these innovative solutions and run a business? So it's not only about just helping or running a volunteer thing, but running a small business in shape of providing access to the people.
So to address the first bit of your question about how there used to be lots of ISPs before, but they all seem to have been absorbed by larger ones, I think that's really got to do with how the business dynamics of running an ISP has changed. It really only caters, I mean, in terms of the margins that exist and the money that one can make, it can only come really in today's environment with scale and volume. So having a small ISP, you have some fixed overheads which you can't get away from. So obviously, if you have a large customer base, then you are able to reduce your fixed overheads and therefore try and improve your bottom line. But if you only have a subscriber base of 1,000 or a couple of hundred or even a couple of thousand, that makes it very difficult for an ISP to survive. So that's why I think what we've seen is a lot of consolidation in the ISP industry, where smaller ISPs have either shut down or been acquired by larger operators. And I think what we're also seeing now globally, be it in the developed country or developing country, that it's somewhat similar to how it was in the old days. In the old days, you had one large incumbent. Now, there is competition in many markets, but all the players are very large players. You don't really have those small players anymore. The second bit of your question was, whether community networks can grow into that. I think we have to probably be a bit careful on what a community network is supposed to be and what it is not. Once you start to become a commercial operation, I think the dynamics change. There are also issues around government policy and regulation that you have to be mindful of. So in some countries and locations where there is a policy and regulatory environment that would allow that, that is indeed possible. But again, from what I said before, it's all about scale and scope and how big the business can become. Because if anyone who's run a business will tell you that, the bottom line is what makes the business survive. A business is not a charity. It has to make money. Otherwise, it's not a business, right? So that's important to keep in mind. And then, of course, what we have is the fact that the licensing regimes that exist in countries, some countries don't actually have a particular licensing regime for, let's say, a rural ISP to operate. Countries that do, that in itself provides some attractiveness and some incentives to set one up. But again, ultimately, those rural operators are usually limited by the geography they can operate in and the subscriber base they will have. So it's an interesting discussion point, of course. But I think fundamentally, community networks are about connecting people who are not able to connect. It's people at the lowest socioeconomic tiers. It's people in underserved areas. It's people in unserved areas. So there, the dynamics are very different when you want to start setting up a business. Maybe in semi-rural areas, perhaps there's some opportunity, but I think it's location dependent, but the short answer is, it's not as simple as it sounds.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. Sarbani and Gustav, do you want to share your angle on this? Any government policies that can perhaps help to support community networks, and there might be people who are interested to run a community network.
Yeah, so I would like to say that we still are in a very formative stage of the community networks being seeded to grow by the community for the community. Perhaps different network architectures and different ways by which the connectivity can be extended to the people. Like, for example, in our village, we have connectivity at only one point, at one location, which is through the SIM card-based cellular router. We can perhaps look into cooperative models, which can be that the fiber is drawn from one place to the other, and the villages or the people that are there along the side of the fiber can hold responsibility for the fiber. In some other places, the community networks do work together with the local ISPs. So the local ISPs are the ones who enable the connectivity in that location. And then from there, it is distributed to the people in the village. So I think we can, perhaps the MVNO license that is there, we can explore that, or with the local ISPs that are there, which procures bulk bandwidth from the telecom operators and then distributes them to the villages. So that option could also be looked in. But yes, I agree with what Raj says, that it is not a very simple and easy thing. We really have to understand, and they have to really keep in mind that they are very much there are a lot of legalities around it, and that needs to be there. In fact, we don't even suggest for boosters. Like, we can suggest boosters to amplify the signals of the telecom operators, but that doesn't happen because that's again a legal issue. We have to take permission from the telecom operators to do that. So perhaps we have to look into these pros and cons, working with different network architectures, working with different stakeholders at the ground level, and therein we can develop a good licensing regime for the community networks. Thanks.
Yeah, well, in our case, we actually see there are some opportunities to work with local ISPs and micro ISPs in rural areas. And from what we have seen, actually, community networks development is actually opening up a window of opportunity for to support the small and medium enterprises. In Indonesia, we have specific regulations by the decree of Ministry of Rural Areas, where some amounts of budget allocations can be invested to village-owned company. And actually, we are in the process of discussion how to address the possibilities in working with the Ministry of Rural Areas to do a piloting on how local ISPs in village level can be established. And yes, I do agree with Raj. There are different dynamics happening in ground level. It can be developed as social business approach or community-based business structure, or probably there are many different models and practices that are somehow available. But we need to test and see whether it can work in local level, because as we probably realize, each country and each region have their own policy, regulation, and licensing system. And in Indonesia, we are quite lucky that the free licenses for radio network is already there. But still, in terms of technicality, we still need to work on this aspect in order to establish the network properly. Because I think what is important in providing reliable and affordable access among communities in rural areas is actually not only deploying the internet towers and fiber optics. There are some amounts important of empowerment and education, because I think from our discussion is that one thing that we need also to prepare when the internet connectivity is being available in rural areas is how to make people understand that the issue of data security and data privacy and so on is also important. And of course, we want to provide internet access that are secure, legal, and affordable for a lot of people. And to achieve that, I think is not an easy way out. We still need to formulate many different approach. And in our case in Indonesia, we also try to regulate on how we establish our local internet infrastructure together with the beneficiaries, with the ISP companies. We have to write down what do's and don't do in order to maintain the internet connectivities in our region. And we also still learn from different approach that are being developed by many friends in Indonesia, because I think what is unique about local ISP and micro ISP is, of course, they are strongly attached with their own local situation, and every place and location have their own challenge and complexity, even though there are also some opportunities that are somehow can be looked at. Yeah, and so I think this community network approach as a movement during the pandemic time is going to be more and more challenging, but also the opportunity is there. So I think we need to provide as much as information and knowledge that can be accessed by many people, so they can try to develop their own community network initiative in their own respective region.
Excellent. Yes. I mean, for example, if you see what's happening in Latin America, for example, the regulators have already started a licensing regime where you are able to connect less than 5,000 people. Because I think unless or until the realization comes from the governments, we would not be able to connect the unconnected. It's as simple as that. And if we have to be ready for the future, where now internet is a lifeline, and wish that these steps were taken before maybe we were able to address these challenges that the students are facing in the rural areas. We were able to address those challenges already, where poor people in a village, say in Pakistan, are not able to access any information, which is very critical during pandemic. But as they say, it's never too late. If there could be some encouraging steps taken from the governments and the regulators, it can indeed help the communities, because I see the communities want to help themselves. You know, unless or until you enable the environment, it's not going to happen. Anyhow, this has been a very good. We're 3 minutes over the time. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying. We still have 241 participants. It's a huge number. For those who are looking for feedback, please go to slido.com. It's still the poll is on. And the last question, as I see, is about the feedback. So please feel free to give us the feedback. I would like to thank you, my panelists, Raj, Gustaff, Sarbani, colleagues Harvey and Jolly, in helping out to run this webinar. It has been a great discussion. I wish we had 2 hours, because I can see there are still a lot of things that we could cover. But I think this is again an opportunity to see if we can do a part 2 of the same discussion, having the same people, perhaps in couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months, to take the discussions from where we are ending. So we'll keep you posted on that. Visit our website link for the upcoming future events. Stay blessed, stay safe, and it's a very a good day, and bye-bye from our side.